Welcome to Making a Smarter Agent, a podcast for people who sell things for a living. Sales, the easiest job to get and yet the hardest one to succeed at. Each week, I take a deep dive into the methods used by the winners in sales, the people who seem to make selling look easy. Real estate. At least half the conversation is about what's going on with interest rates. How come I can't sell my house on Long Island? What's really going on with the masses moving out of New York? Is it really a political thing, or is it something else? Are people really just coming of an age? Is there that silver tidal wave where we have so many people in America that are turning 65 each and every day? Is that a factor? What's going on? Part of it is true, but just as a note, and this isn't scientific by any means, the headmaster of my daughter's school told me that 35% of this year's applicants for next year are coming from northern states. So these aren't people that are retiring. Something is actually going on, and that's what I'm trying to get to here. Okay, so with that said, we're going to talk about real estate. We have Bruce Toll, the CEO and founder of Toll Brothers, which since its inception, you've built and sold 122,000 units in 20 states. More. Okay, well, you need to update your bio. And Howard, the chairman of Douglas Elliman Real Estate, CEO of the Vector Group, owner of Nathan's Hot Dogs. So let's start this off. The current state of the real estate market. Income is up, unemployment is low. And if you agree with that statement, in your opinion, why are so many real estate markets in this country hurting? And I'll kick it off with Howard.
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, you've had a couple of events, and the main one being the loss of the state and local tax deductions. Mm-hmm. So you have this trend of people from high tax states going to low tax or no tax states. New York loses between 250 and 270 people a day to South Florida.
To South Florida,
almost all to South Florida. California loses close to that, a little bit less. And they sort of scatter. Some go to Texas, and some go to Nevada, Las Vegas area, because those are no-tax states. Mm-hmm. And Chicago is the third one where most people are leaving. Also similar in the 200s, people a day leave, and they're sort of scattered around, where they go. So surely that, when you talk about politics or taxes, it's really one and the same. Mm-hmm. The tax changes happened because of politics, and it was sort of, I would say, maybe it sounded good in the beginning to people, but I'm not so sure. In fact, I'm sure I'm going to be a Floridian someday, but the real fact is the issue you have in Florida with the new law, while it sounds good that you don't have to pay, you never paid state and local taxes before, state and local taxes you were able to deduct, but now you can't deduct either. And we know the real estate taxes in Florida, that's where they get the bulk of their revenue because they don't have an income tax. And you have very high taxes here compared to New York, for instance. Sure. So if that, I personally believe, and I have no reason to believe it except in my mind and hearing a little gossip, I believe that no matter who wins the presidency and controls, Congress next year, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, I have a fairly good feeling that the SALT bill will be thrown out.
It'll be thrown out.
Be that.
You think they'll give you back the deductions?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do.
Bruce?
Because it's not working. They're losing too much revenue from the people that leave. By the way, in New Jersey, there was one hedge fund guy that left. It's been in the newspapers. And New Jersey said that he accounted for 10% of the total tax revenue, income tax revenue in New Jersey.
What?
One person.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
We'll get to questions in a minute. Okay, good. So Leon's very well read on that. Thank you. Bruce, you were going to comment?
Well, he's right. I mean, even Carl Icahn is now a Florida resident, and you can name a few other billionaires. Stanley Bogen's, a Florida resident. No, he's not a Florida resident, come to think of it. He's absolutely right. People who make a lot of money do want to live in Florida today because of the tax situation. Forgetting the real estate taxes, it's the income tax that kills you in New York or Connecticut. But a good portion, about half the people who are coming to Florida are coming just because they turned 60 or 65. And Toll Brothers has developments that are age restricted.
Sure.
For all intents and purposes, St. Andrews age restricted because if you can't come here if you're 35, you can't afford it. But
actually, you know what? We sold a 2-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side and bought in here for significantly less after renovation than we would. I think St. Andrews is a bargain. How do you like that? If you really look at it, thank you. Go ahead, knock yourselves out. Clap. But I think St. Andrews, if you really look at what people get out of it, but that said, sorry, continue.
It's in Manhattan. There's a lot of other people.
Yeah.
I'm in Philadelphia, and we have a lot of Philadelphians. A couple sitting here, but there's a lot of Philadelphians who come here.
But I've got to sell 250 homes to Howard's friends that are moving down from Manhattan, so that's a big deal. We've got a.
But if you compare it, but Bruce is right. If you compare New York City to even Long Island today, because all the suburban markets around New York City are very depressed. Whether it's Long Island, Westchester, Fairfield County, the prices are down probably. Greenwich, so Connecticut. I'd say the prices are down 60%, 60, from where they were pre-08.
That's on homes, but not
on homes,
on
yes.
homes,
On
but
homes,
not
yes.
apartments.
Right.
Apartments are running like mad. Both Toll Brothers and myself are building a lot of apartments in the Philadelphia or New Jersey, Connecticut suburbs, Westchester even, because we do get to deduct the real estate taxes as a business. So it pays for people.
We'll get into product type and what's being built and where. But first, where's my microphone girl? Okay, hey, come on, Sophie, you're on here. Leon, right over here, please.
I mean, it's clear what's going on. All the high-tax states are basically screwed. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, California, etc. My bigger question is, why are not housing prices in Florida doing better? If all this immigration is occurring, I sold my house in St. Andrews that I owned for 25 years for the exact same price I bought it 25 years ago.
That's not unusual because if you look at the suburban type marketplace in Florida, there's always a new project that's the newest and the better. That's just it's sort of a Florida thing. It doesn't happen too many other places. Happens in Miami a lot also. They build one tower that has everything, and 2 years later there's another tower that has more than everything. And sometimes it lifts the price a little bit because the newer is always more expensive. But in most cases it doesn't. It sort of stays the same or depresses the price. But but to say that the prices are down, generally speaking, I say is probably not that accurate. It may be, I'm sure it's accurate in what you're saying here, but in Palm Beach, for instance, we sold the highest price houses ever this summer. We sold the highest price ever recorded in Palm Beach, $111,100,000. We sold in 1 month, we sold 5 houses, including that one, which were like almost $300 million, $275 million in sales.
Palm Beach is unusual.
But also Miami.
Don't confuse it with the rest of the
But
world.
also Miami, we sold the highest priced condo ever, $60 million for a condo on the beach in Miami at a project called Faina. We sold a $60 million house, and there's one even sold greater than that now in Indian Creek Island, which is Miami. So,
Edmund, how many houses have been torn down here in the last 5 years?
A lot.
Right. Exactly.
A lot. There's 732 homes at St. Andrews, and certainly the ones we had a soft year last year. But guess what? There were 82 homes on the market at this time last year. Today there's 62. So I think that there's issues with product. And the one thing that the elephant in the room is the membership equity. People pay $150,000 to join, and between POA and membership, another $45,000 a year. So that's definitely something that's going to be a lag.
Yeah, but he's right. The reason is that they're a little bit depressed here, so to speak, is because everybody wants new. Who wants to buy a house 25 years old? My house that I live in Palm Beach is now 25 years old. I just had to have some toilets changed. I got plumbing, things go wrong. Electrician, I tell everybody.
The toilets lasted
Yeah.
25 years. You're not using them.
They were
enough.
they were cold. No, they were cold.
I never
They were
lasted
very
25
good.
years.
But I have a daughter who's looking to buy a house in Palm Beach, and I told her only look at the new ones. Don't look at the old ones. Who wants to buy a house with problems? You want to buy a brand new house. So that's what she's doing. She's looking at buying a brand new house in Palm Beach. But I tell everybody who asks me to buy new, and not just because Toll Brothers builds brand new houses.
I was going to ask, yeah. So where are you concentrating your efforts, given the changing demographics? How's that affected?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I am no longer president of Toll Brothers. My brother and I both left our offices at Toll Brothers about 2 or 3 years ago. I left the company completely. I have a new company in real estate called BET Investment, Bruce Elliott Toll. And I am building. I'm very active in building. Most people in real estate can't quit for 2 reasons. One, they like it. And the other reason, if you're a builder and you stop after 5 years, your depreciation will be gone and you'll have to pay taxes more than you earn. So you can never stop. But I say me and Toll Brothers also builds a lot of apartments now. I mean, Toll Brothers still built, I think it was 8,100 homes we delivered last year. But we're all building a lot of apartments because that's where the new action is today with both the younger people who don't have a down payment. And, I was talking to my wife on the way here. When I went to school, tuition was $1,100 a year. And for some
it's higher now.
For some older people, now it's $1,100 a week. So when they get out, if they're not fortunate to have you as parents, they have a big debt, so they can't afford to buy a house, so they rent. It's a lot of people I think are going to stay in apartments for the rest of their lives who are not going to ever get around to buying a house.
Even I think the loss of the SALT deductions has a big play into that also.
Yes, absolutely.
We have a question up here. Come on, Soph.
Here, she's got the mic right to your left.
Up, we got a mic right over here.
Front row.
Right there. You're right there. Okay, never mind.
In this very high-priced market, I mean, the millions of dollars, is it mostly foreign money? Or
No.
There's almost no foreign money coming into the country these days because you started off, you had the Russians, and then they had sanctions and so forth, can't get the money out. Then you had the Asians. Now they can't get the money out. The only thing they get out of the country now is the flu. And then hopefully not to this country. And then the South American countries, which were big buyers, especially in Miami, they're all bankrupt. There's none of them. I mean, Brazil's bankrupt, Argentina's bankrupt.
There's still some people with money, but it's a trickle compared to what it used to be.
And they have to have the money out already in a lot of these countries if they don't have it out by now. Mexico, which was a big buyer, the differentiation in the currency, the exchange rate, is terrible. The dollar is so strong against the peso, so it's that hurts the Mexicans coming here.
So are there any countries leading into the United States?
The super rich come here, but not for the mass market like Key Biscayne is all from Caracas or someplace. Yeah. I mean,
Venezuela, they're all of Key Biscayne.
Well, Colombia.
And Colombia.
I had some friends from Colombia and WPO. Any WPO, YPO people here? Nobody? Where are they all?
I think they're hiding.
Okay.
UJA, most of them look like now, YPO.
Lots of UJA. Lots of UJA. But so Bruce, just to go back to what we were talking about before, Howard said 250 people are moving to Florida every day.
No, 1,000 people are moving to Florida.
But 250 from New York.
Right, from New York.
And 1,000 people are moving to Florida every day. We've got the silver tidal wave, 10,000 people a day, according to the Social Security Administration, are turning 65. What is even though you're outside of Toll Brothers now,
I may be outside officially, but
you know what's going on.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
At Toll Brothers, or
as far as how are developers today changing the product type to accommodate where are you bullish?
Well, we're bullish all over the country. I mean, we're in 23 or 24 states. California is about 30% of our business today, but Florida is still a big thing. Texas is very big. No taxes, Texas or Florida, but we're all over. We're in the Carolinas. I mean, we don't get restricted because of taxes. I mean, business is great in New Jersey for us, which is unusual. Our average house is, according to across the board, is about $800,000, but in California it's way over $1 million, mainly because it costs so much to build in California. The biggest problem we have is finding people to work. We used to build a house in California or Arizona, Nevada in 6-7 months back in 2005. 2010 came along. We lost all the jobs. The people, the Mexicans disappeared. Now business is booming again, and it takes us a year and 1 or 2 months to build a house, only because there's a shortage of labor.
Okay. Just want to mention it's not just state and local taxes, but when you look at Florida, when you talk why people are coming and kidding about what age groups and so, but surely as you age, the one big plus to Florida is there's no estate tax. Estate tax, so that's a big deal for people from New York, California, and these other places where with federal estate taxes and state estate taxes, you could be losing 60% of what you worked for your whole life to leave someone 65%. So
Sure.
it's almost not worth dying.
It's almost what?
It's not worth dying at that point. You just keep
And
going.
you'd be amazed how many people don't realize there's such a thing as an estate tax.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So, when it comes to what's being built down here, well, first of all, I'm kind of surprised to hear what you said about California, just because everyone's talking about how it's an exodus out of the state. Why are you doing so well there?
Because there's still a lot of people, and in Southern California, we do have a lot of Koreans and Chinese and certain Asian groups, and they move in mass developments. We built a development of about 2,000 homes below L.A., above Newport, a place called Baker Ranch, which nobody here heard of. But we built 2,000 homes there, and I'd say 1,500 of them were all Korean. Because, you get the first 50 in and everybody else hears about it and they all want to live in the same place. No offense, it's like Jews. They all want to live in the same place together. I mean, this place is probably, I don't even, what is it, 70, 80, 90?
I sell real estate, fair housing law, my man.
You can't talk
I can't tell it, okay? I can't do that. But you could talk to Kristen Pfeiffer, who manages the place here. She'll gladly tell you that. But in any case, so where else are you building now aside from California? Let's talk a little bit more.
No, we build, and Toll Brothers builds all across the country. I mean, we're not in Kansas, but we're from outside of Boston, all the way down here to Florida, and then we skip Alabama, etc. We jump over to Texas, and then Nevada, Arizona. And Idaho is very good right now for us.
And actually, Toll Brothers is a fairly recent entrant, maybe 10 years now,
20
to
years.
New York City.
20.
To New York City.
Yeah, 20 years.
Is it that much?
Yeah, it's been 20
They're doing
years.
a lot in New York
Yes,
City now.
we have probably today.
David von Spreckelsen, who runs
Yeah,
it.
right.
Good
He
friend of
runs
mine.
it for us, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we probably have about 10 buildings going up in New York City right now.
Right.
I remember the first one we did, but I sort of get lost when I get below the numbers, but the number streets, I mean.
Yeah.
Only because I don't go there that much. But we have a lot of action in New York, and business is pretty good, but we stay in a certain price range. On the whole, we're between $2 and $5 million in New York City. We don't build, as a rule, 20, 30, 40, $50 million apartments.
Okay, very good. We have a question back here, Soph. Where's Sophie? Oh, you got the mic.
Yeah. I have a question about the relationship between interest rates and home sales. In 1979, I got a 10% mortgage, and some years later, I thought it was a genius when I refinanced at 8.5%. Now I have a 3.25 30-year mortgage.
Well, you were lucky. In 1980, the mortgages were 17%.
Yeah, right. I was. Question is, you mentioned the depreciation of homes up in Connecticut, other places. Why, even down here, at the clubs, you're not seeing this tremendous appreciation? Why, if interest rates are so low, are we not seeing more price appreciation in homes? What's the relationship?
Well, actually, in a higher interest environment, theoretically, that sort of points towards higher prices because it's it's a fixed asset and it's replacement cost. And so, if interest rates are higher, yes, you're looking at one part of it. You could get a cheap mortgage, But when there's inflation and high interest rates is really when houses appreciate at a greater level. But I think also what you have today is, I think I would say that my personal view is that the reason you haven't seen in the suburbs, if you ask anyone why, the first thing they say is because real estate taxes are so high. And that is true in a lot of the suburban areas. But it's interesting because I think it's almost compelling now to live in a suburban area around New York City, even if you're paying high taxes. Because I remember when I bought my first expensive house in Long Island, because I wanted to be Stuart Benson's neighbor for some reason, Hewlett Harbor. There was a broker there, Morty Haves. So I don't know. You remember Morty Haves. You were there also. But Morty Haves comped the house I was buying in Hewlett Harbor on the water to an apartment in the city. So for $1 million, I think I paid $1,600,000, which was a lot of money then. It was about 1986, 87. He showed me that in the city, the house was about 6,000 feet on the water on an acre. In the city, in those days, I could have had about a 2,000 square foot apartment, okay, and, in a building that was okay, but not fantastic. And yes, true that I had to pay $50,000 in taxes in Long Island, but in Long Island, you're sending your kids to public school. In the city, you're spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a kid in private school. So the fact is, there is compelling reasons that the suburbs should be higher. Hasn't happened yet. And I think about the only case that's that I've heard that's legitimate, if both parents are working in the city, I would say it's pretty hard to move out to the suburbs. If one's working, you probably can make it work and have a much bigger house, more property, send them to a good school. That's a public school where you're not paying for it. So it's more than makes up the difference. If you think about it, if the taxes are $50,000 in Long Island for the house, that'll be a little less than the cost of sending one child to private school in New York City. So there are compelling reasons.
Let me just throw the reverse question at you, just because we're talking about where the changing demographic of people that are buyers and aging demographic and where people are moving. Douglas Elliman, I know, spends a lot of money on technology and training us. I certainly experience it every day, and it's great.
Has it worked for you?
Yes, I'm here.
Good.
No, it's working very, very well, and it's a terrific team. But I want to know, is Elliman as a whole changing its approach to the product type that it's going to start marketing? Right now there's a lot of new construction, and we had some of them on the slides.
Well, we have a very robust new construction business. In fact, we're doing 3 projects in Boca now. We're doing the Elliman, which is downtown Boca. Mm-hmm. We're doing the Mandarin residences, and then we're doing Koya, which is part of Boca West. Where's Jay? Any others, Jay? Right. In Boca? That's it. So we're doing 3 projects here. They're all different for different reasons. But they're all, good. But if you looked at those prices, you would say the houses that are selling here are selling too cheap here. It's just a fact of life.
Howard, do any of those
hold on. Take the mic. So
any of them retail?
Question. Any of them include retail?
No. Elliman, no. Which one? Mandarin. Mandarin does, yes.
Because it leads me to the next question.
I know. We have a broker already, I think, on it, but I'm sorry. No. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Where do you see retail going here in Florida?
Good question.
Obviously, as it
I don't know. Maybe Bruce knows about retail. I really don't know retail. All I know is Madison Avenue is empty. It's like very few stores.
That's because it's all overpriced.
Right. Exactly right. Exactly.
But I'd rather have it filled at a lower price than have it empty.
Okay. We have another question over here. And you want to? Okay, Sophie's got it. Wait 1 second, Steve. Hustle, Sophie.
If you're lucky and you own commercial in Florida in the right places, it does very well. Because as he said, there's more people moving here every day.
How do you see the markets over the next 2-year period, peering into the future?
Real estate? So here's what I think. A lot of people are very much worried about the stock market. Oh, if it's bad now, like in New York City, prices are down. How bad is it going to get when the stock market adjusts? Which, let's face it, we all know it's going to adjust at some time. I'm not saying it's going to crash, but it's going to come down at some point. So I have a view, which is, I guess contrarian, is that I think as the stock market starts to come down, real estate's going to go up because people are going to be taking money out of the market and they're going to invest it in real estate, which is already depressed. And it's a pretty good switch. And also real estate, I call it a comfortable asset to own. You know why? Because you can't figure out what it's worth every single second or every single minute of every single day. Now, in the stock market, you have your iPhone or whatever, and you have your app on it for CNBC, whatever, and every day or every minute, you know how much you lose or make.
Or if you own Tesla, you know how much you make.
Yeah. So I think that there's going to be money coming into real estate as the stock market comes down.
I doubt that you're right.
Okay.
Money goes when money's treated best.
Look, you weren't such a good investor. You paid 25 years ago, and your house is worth the same price.
I look at my house. I look at my house as shelter. I don't look as an investment.
If you had bought a Toll Brothers house, maybe you would have done a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly.
Right across 95.
Are you guys in the Borscht Belt? Or are you serious?
You could have bought Meisner Country Club.
The reality is you got to look at real estate very differently. Residential real estate is shelter. That's your living. Commercial real estate is an investment property. But I would say that if the stock market started to decline, it would be very negative for real estate values.
Which type? All real estate? You separated commercial from residential.
Well, let's face it, that everybody's moving out on the risk curve. The central bank is running irresponsible policies. We have a policy of financial suppression. If the average marginal tax rate is 40%, and you get a 1.5% return on a 10-year government bond, you keep 60 of 1.5 is 90 basis points. The rate of inflation is running 2%. So you're losing ground every year if you have your money in fixed income.
You can buy a Walgreens and get 5.5 to 6.5%.
We're talking about Walgreens real estate?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're such a good.
It's plenty.
I don't have to tell you, they're such a good tenant. You get terrible escalations. So the moment rates start going up, that real estate value is going to go down. But whatever.
Yeah.
You're worried about old age?
No, I'm not worried about anything, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm giving all my money away. I work for charity.
We'll host a brawl in the parking lot immediately following the presentation.
I must tell you a quick story. My wife's heard this about 100 times. I was driving my daughter, when she was 6 years old, down the street. She wanted and her older sister had gotten a Jeep. She says, I want a Jeep too when I get older. I said, no, I don't think you want a Jeep. I'm going to get you something else. She says, so we have a little fight in the car with a 6-year-old. So she says, well, okay, I'm going to get home. I'm going to ask Pop-Up, who's my father at that time. And now I'm Pop-Up. But she had said I'm going to ask your father or my grandfather for a Jeep. And she's only 6 years old. So I said, well, you can't do that because he decided to leave all his money to charity because he had just heard about inheritance tax at that time. He didn't even know about it. So we get back to my house, and my father comes over one day, and she comes running up to him. She says, Pop-Up, I'm changing my name to Charity Tall. She thought she'd get the money.
Smart kid. That's very good. Bruce, you said you've got 10 buildings. I think you said 10 buildings going up in New York. Manhattan?
Yes.
Okay.
No, we are.
But again, all of Howard's friends are moving down here. Why are you building in New York?
Well, they're all condos. We build a lot of rentals in the suburbs. We don't build any rentals in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. Why are we building? Because we sell them. I mean, it's a business. That's what we're in. If I was a grocer, I'd have to get meat. It's what I do for a living.
True. But with when you keep reading about how it's so difficult to sell, it just seems, again...
I don't worry about that. I mean, I'm bullish on America. I'm bullish on real estate. 220 Central Park South. Christ, they sell apartments there for 40, 50, 60 million all the time. I had dinner with the owner, and he said he's almost all sold out. In fact, he bragged that he made $1 billion on that building.
He did. Coronado, they made $1 billion, and we sold the highest price apartment ever in the world, $260 million for one apartment.
Right.
So questions.
In that building.
I know.
Yeah.
Guess what? A hedge fund manager, Ken Griffin.
Right.
I signed a confidentiality agreement. That's why I didn't sign it.
He did a lousy job because it was in the New York Times.
Yeah.
So
they put out a press release, so they did a positive job also.
Right. Wasn't very confidential.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Question. I saw a hand before. Anyone? Okay. So, just notwithstanding what Bruce just said, when do you think New York prices will stabilize?
Well, look, my view is that I think they've come close to stabilizing. I think they're not going to go up for a little while. I'm sort of hoping by the end of the year, a lot of the inventory. Actually, interesting, the last 4, 5, 6 weeks have been pretty good. But that doesn't make a year, so we'll see. But they've sort of stabilized. And realistically, the prices are probably down 20%. And that means some could be down 25 or 30, some could be down 10 or 15. But don't forget, a lot of times they're down those numbers from a number that really wasn't true to begin with. Sellers always think what they have is worth more. So if they're overpriced, 25%.
The numbers don't mean anything. In the 60s, apartments sold for $10,000 a
Yep.
room. In the 70s, they went up to maybe $100,000. Then they went up to $1 million a room. And now they're coming down a little bit. But people still like to buy new, which is why Toll Brothers is there. I mean, do you want to buy my apartment I bought was new, even though it was an old building, it was completely gutted. 838 Fifth Avenue. And
So it's 15 East 69th, right?
Right, yeah.
Right, that was
right. If you go on Park Avenue, one of those apartments they're there 100 years old. Again, they've got repairs and things that have to be done. It's a gut job most of the time.
I say the weakest market in the city where you can get the best bargains are the Upper East Side, Park Avenue, pre-war co-ops, which used to be the most expensive. So if you take a building like 740 Park Avenue, which was one of the most exclusive buildings, what was $40 million not too many years ago, they're having trouble selling at $20 million today. It's just been a big.
But again, you have to gut the apartment. Like David Koch just died, he had an apartment there. But it's a gut job if you buy one of these things on Madison or Park. A lot of people just want to have brand new. We built one on the corner of 65th and Lexington. And we sold it out 1, 2, 3, and they sell now for double what we sold them.
Yeah.
Sure.
And by the way, besides having to renovate them, they have what they call summer work rules. So you have basically 3 months in the summer to do the work. So if you're doing a complete renovation, it could take you 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and I have a friend that lives at 9 something or other on Fifth Avenue, and he just downsized. He had a big apartment. He had a whole floor in the building, and he downsized to one that's only half a floor because they're having assessments on those old co-ops. And by the way, anybody who buys a co-op is crazy. You should buy a condo. I'm against co-ops in general.
Yeah. You don't sell.
Co-ops are worth 20% less than a condo. When I bought our first apartment, we bought back in the 80s in New York. It was a co-op. I had to lie to the board when I applied. Told them I was moving there. I was moving Toll Brothers Company there and everything. And and I was moving there with my 4 daughters, etc. After about 2 years, some lady came up and said, "I've never seen all 4 of your daughters." I said, "Oh, well, they're at boarding school," which was a lie. I mean, I just never moved. You have to lie to get into the board sometimes. These co-ops are crazy. And they were all ruled in those days when I bought it back in the 80s. They were ruled by people who bought apartments there in the 50s. So they didn't understand.
Steve?
Yes, you said that Toll Brothers does stuff outside of Boston. How come they haven't gone into Boston proper?
To Boston?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. We are moving into Boston right now. I forgot. I don't know the addresses, but we're getting ready to start some places in Boston.
I think the problem we're trying to build in Boston today, because we've been speaking to developers there, to build something new in a great location in Boston, if you can't sell for $4,000 to $5,000 a foot, you're going to lose money. It's just the land cost is so expensive, the construction cost is so expensive.
It's the same as Manhattan.
Yeah.
Sure.
We are building in downtown Philadelphia. We have for 25, 30 years. We're building in D.C. and Bethesda, et cetera. We always have been.
Yeah.
And we're also moving in Atlanta. We've got 3 buildings going up now, condos in Atlanta. And Dallas, I think we have 1 or 2 getting ready.
Great. Gentlemen in the middle
Hi,
there?
thank you very much.
Sure.
Gentlemen, could you give us your assessment of the Hamptons real estate market, and if you could segment it into the entry level, the mid-price, and then the ultra, expensive
I can't
properties?
because we don't build in Long Island. We built one job in Long Island, did very well. We just didn't like the access, so we don't build in the Hamptons.
So we have a pretty predominant market share in the Hamptons,
Right.
dominant market share in the Hamptons. It's been tough last couple of years. It's bad, but not as bad as people make it out to be. Because again, when you talk about overpricing, there's no market worse than the Hamptons to be overpriced. A house sold recently. It was the house that was owned by a real estate guy, Eddie Gordon, okay, who passed away. His widow put it on the market. They put it on the market, I think, originally for $75 million. It just sold this past few months back for $28 million. So they say, wow, look, it's down like 70%. But it's not true. That house was never worth $75 million.
And what did he pay for it? 5 or 6?
He built it.
Okay,
He built it. But maybe
it
it was worth, at the top of the market, maybe it was worth 35.
First of all, you
40.
cannot talk about real estate and talk
Yeah.
about homes or apartments that are 20, 30, 40, 50 million.
Yeah.
That's not the market. What are you talking about? You're talking about 1% of the 1%ers.
But like
You're
most,
talking about a couple of
like most other markets, though, below 2 million is very strong. It's always strong in
Yes.
most places. Above that, it gets tougher, and there's a lot of overpricing. And because don't forget, also, most of these people, this is their second home. They don't really care. They're not that motivated to sell it right away. So they're going to put it on at some aspirational price and sit there and wait 3 years, 5 years, whatever, and see what happens.
And Bezos isn't moving there. He's moving to L.A. or some
Right?
other place.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
Lee?
This is not a question, just an observation. I get a kick out of the fact that, particularly in California, the people moan about the high prices, and they don't make a connection to the extraordinarily onerous zoning requirements. I own 10% of Newhall land and farming that owned the Newhall Ranch for 100 years.
Yep.
Okay, 10 years ago, they found some endangered cactus on the ranch, and it took them 10 years to get zoning after that. Just amazing.
How's the cactus?
No, California is
about the
unusual. It costs us $50,000 a lot just for permits and other stuff. In fact, they just made California more expensive. Every new house built in California has to have solar panels on the roof now, which is another $10,000 to $15,000 a house. We used to say, my father used to say, Michigan. I said, everybody knows what that means.
Meshuggah means crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, just FYI in
For the
case anyone.
non-Jews in the room.
But there's a couple. There's a couple.
It is crazy out in California. It's another world. It's an independent country.
Sure. Jay?
It's actually an interesting segue. My question's not that, but I just moved here from California for exactly that reason. But I have
Welcome to Florida.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We know you're highly intelligent now.
Thank you. I have two questions that kind of go together. But they're two different topics to some extent. I look at where the cracks are in the ice, because mostly as a commercial real estate guy, I don't see the market being depressed. But I see two things that could affect the market. I'm wondering what you think. One deals with, whether you believe it or not, global warming and how that affects property near the water. And are people starting to say, hey, I don't want to be on the beach anymore? And then the other addresses what Mr. Toll was saying before on the apartment side. The only thing that seems to pencil these days are the ultra expensive luxury housing with the penthouses because otherwise it doesn't pencil.
Nobody builds affordable housing
anymore.
Today. My first house I built was $17,490. I mean, it's like you can't even buy a car for that rate, $490 today.
So I wonder if those are two cracks. Someone says, well, what's the weakness? Where's the Achilles heel? Do you see waterfront global warming or the potential of sea level rise and also an overbuilding in the luxury market being problems that we'd have to face in the near future? Or does that worry you at all?
Yeah. You have to talk to people. I'm not one of them that understands global warming. To me, when it's too hot, people say it's global warming. When it's too cold, it's global warming. When you have a drought, it's global warming. When you have a flood, it's global warming. I've never heard it defined, really, what it is.
It is a big deal.
I know it's climate.
We all think about it.
But they say it's global warming in any extreme of the climate.
We all think about the water rising. I live on the water in Palm Beach. In the Antarctic, they just had a piece fall off, and they say that in a couple of years that's going to be 4 feet, the water. If the water goes up 4 feet, the bottom part of my lot may be a little bit
my observation of that is everyone here should buy something a little bit off the water, and if they live long enough for global warming, you'll have waterfront property to sell. You'll make some money.
Do you have the mic? I'm going to pass it back there. Who else had a question?
I have a question.
Right here. Ed, please.
Over the last couple of years, I've been looking for apartments in New York or condos, and we've come across a number that we really liked, and then when we got down to the details, they said it was subject to a land lease.
No.
There's not very many. There's a
Very
few of those.
few.
Very few.
We've only built one in the last 10 years that I know of that had a land lease. And since we've sold out of it, I can say that I would recommend not buying in that building. But there was a building on 3rd Avenue that Trump built years ago.
Yep.
And it was on a land lease. And the lease had an escalation in it. And all the people got assessed basically $1 million.
Well, we advised them and negotiated for them to buy the lease.
They had to
from
buy
the
the
owner.
lease.
They had to buy the lease. And having said that, there was a lot of money they put up. But what basically happened is the prices went up about exactly to what they were assessed for the land lease.
But some people couldn't even afford it who lived there. And they had to
No, we lent the money. We had a fund.
Yeah,
that lent the money. We got them financing.
I advise against it. New York is unusual. They have a lot of ground like that. I look at property. I own 3 shopping centers down here, and I just turned down another one that was on a land lease. I said, who wants to buy a shopping center on a land lease? Because I don't know what the hell's going to happen in the future. And I wouldn't buy anything on a land lease.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, right here.
In the New York City rental apartment marketplace, with the new rules where the real estate brokers can no longer charge the renters a commission, how do you think that's going to affect the rental apartment market? Is the sellers just going to be renting more and you're going to see prices going up, or the real estate brokers going to be looking for a new job?
Well, first of all, that was stayed, that law, and there'll be a hearing in about a month on it. Look, most of the lawyers that have gone into it think that it's just a bad interpretation of the law, the recent law that was passed last year. They're now interpreting it. They now came out with this. It wasn't really what the Department of State decided to come out with this interpretation, which was completely. It never said that in the law that was passed last year. So who knows what's going to happen? They'll probably be litigated for a long time. But as of now, it's not true. So.
Okay.
The brokers are working very hard to do a lot of things in the next 30 days. And my guess is it won't be 30 days. It'll be extended and extended and extended.
Jared? How would you talk about St. Andrews instead of Manhattan now for a few minutes and tell us your value of the new houses selling for $4 million, the older houses maybe are 3, 2s, there's no 1s, they're either $450,000, or how would you say the market is going to increase, decrease, or it's stabilized? Or because every time you send a report, every house is worth less than it was the week before.
I don't think. Well, I'm not on the panel. I'm just the moderator. But
you're knowledgeable.
And I'll gladly talk to you about that. And I certainly hope everyone here reads my weekly report that goes out. But I think
if you keep sending them bad things, they're going to stop reading it.
Yeah, well, he's reading it. Yeah, I gotta learn how to make it a little rosier. That's a long question. Let's get to, I really do want to give time to the panelists to be able to speak, but I appreciate you asking, and we could certainly talk after.
First of all, every house is specific, so it's hard to really answer the question.
Part of what was said.
Look, what's your land cost? You got to start with that.
And the difference could be across the street.
Yeah.
That if you're up against the Florida Turnpike, and I oftentimes say this when we're considering new budgets here, and we're considering raising fees, particularly for the new people coming in, you've got to realize that it's almost a reverse mortgage that's going on to the home. A spa costs money. A golf course costs money. All of this stuff costs money, and by all means, this club needs it. There's no doubt. We have to be competitive. On the other hand, at some point, the balance has to be met. Because you get to a point where you're not going to be able to there's 75 homes here along the Florida Turnpike that are going to be sold, at least their membership, for the same dollar amount as on Ayrshire Lane. Now, the person that's buying it, the cost of capital, when it comes to somebody that might be buying a $500,000 home and paying $150,000 to join versus the guy buying a $3 million home paying $150,000, it's a very, very different mindset.
You should not buy your house here thinking you're going to make a profit. You buy the house because you want to live here, and it's not an investment, it's a way of life. If you buy a house here for an investment thinking it's going to go up, it's the wrong reason to buy the house.
But there's been a lot of articles in the newspapers about a lot of these golf course communities where they're giving the house away or the apartment away for someone to take over the membership because they're stuck with the membership. Not at this level. Not at this level. These are much less expensive.
The article you're referring to was about Boca West, if I recall. It was in the New York Post and other media. It
wasn't just Boca West. There was a few projects.
In particular, there was some units that were sold they paid the buyer because the person inheriting the property was going to get more money back from that, and the unit was literally sucked all the value out of it. But now they're doing different things to try and curtail that. There's an investor group that's come in to try and renovate some of these and all that. Anyway, I didn't want to go down that route. We have just time for a couple questions here.
But it's also a very specific thing. I know houses, really apartments that they're giving away. Somebody mentioned Hunter's Run. The first two sections have very small apartments,
right,
and they give them away. The same
You're talking
thing
about
with,
such old apartments. I mean, I know Boca Lago and Hunter's Run.
Glen Eagles has the same thing. If you're upstairs and it's...
There's another reason. First, those were all built pre-91. Since 1991, all the houses here are built with concrete and block because they have to be hurricane-proof. That's the state law starting, after Andrew. Anybody who buys one of those places is crazy.
That's true.
They're made out of wood.
But there are specific areas, even in these country clubs, that are given away, and others are still doing decently.
Yeah. Get a good hurricane, you won't have to worry about it.
At some point, we should probably discuss extremely local. For anyone who lives here, you know about Lyons Road. And we've got the bridges, 7 bridges, Lotus, Boca Bridges. Guess what? There's no more room. They've built. And we've got, and again, Jay Parker's sitting right here. We've had meetings with you and our continuing education about the population growth in our area, that Boca is expected to grow by 25% in the next 10 years. And it's aging younger. We've got an average age of 48, if I recall that meeting, and it's going to be 51. So, that's got to have some type of effect. We haven't even talked about the possibility of inflation and how that would affect your building
Boca's
costs.
going to continue to grow population-wise. Staples, where the Staples office headquarters are, it was just sold. A friend of mine bought it, and he's going to build, I think it's like 800 units there between townhouses, apartments, etc.
Probably rentals, though, right?
Some will be rentals, and some will be for sale. He wants to do both. So there's going to be a lot of older office buildings taken down in Boca and having them rebuilt as apartments, etc.
Sure. There's one question that I want to ask, because I know probably most of you are familiar with Zillow and some of the other online tools that buyers use. And Howard, I'm just curious to know what are your thoughts on the technology? There's been no industry that's been impacted more, in my opinion, than real estate. What's going to... Are these people going to need me in 10 years?
Well, look, I think that basically, technology has somewhat taken over in certain markets, but not the metropolitan markets. People spending hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars aren't going to buy it on a computer or online.
They're still going to need a broker.
Yeah, they're going to need a broker.
Same thing with automobiles. Everybody says they're buying cars online. I happen to be a large automobile dealer in the Philadelphia suburbs. We sell 85% of our cars online until you walk in to sign the title, and then we switch everybody to something else. So nobody buys what they thought they were going to. No, that's true nationwide. Nobody buys what they thought they were going to buy.
Yeah, that's who's your competitor?
I'm
just kidding.
It's just the way. You can't stuff a car down a telephone. So when you have to come in to actually sign the papers, everybody sees it and they really want something a little bit better.
Sure.
The other thing I would also say is that technology ends up moving a lot slower than most people think. So ultimately, what's ultimately mean? 50 years from now, 100 years from now? Yeah, maybe. In our lifetimes, probably not.
Okay. I've got one more question in mind for this, and then we're going to switch over and talk a little bit about the Holocaust Museum. Does anyone else have other questions? Stuart, right up front. Sophie, can you give him the mic, please?
I just wanted to ask whether you thought, like back in the days of the RTC, do you see an opportunity again for auctioning as a business, as like Howard, you and I had a mutual friend who was president of
The
Merrill
RTC
Lynch.
was stupid incorporated. I made more money under the RTC than I could believe. We bought so much stuff.
A lot of people got rich over the RTC.
I got filthy rich over that. We were trying to buy some ground for $40,000 a unit. They said, no, the RTC has to sell it to you. And then they came back and they said, okay, maybe 20,000 unit. It went to auction up off the Jersey Turnpike. I'll never forget. Go to this auction. We offered $40,000 a lot for this ground outside of Philadelphia. We ended up buying it for $2,000 a lot because the RTC thought it wasn't worth what we were offering.
But do you see an opportunity as a private enterprise of an auction subsidiary as a way of selling additional property?
Look, here's my experience in auctions, okay? You see it in all markets. Very rarely does a house or apartment sell at the auction. What it does is it drums up some interest, and then once in a while, not that often, it'll sell to someone that saw it in the auction and did a private negotiation, a month later, 6 months later, 3 months later. Very rarely do they see a sell at auctions.
Okay. Very, very good.
Thank you.
So here's
You're not going into the auction business, are you?
It was Don Hannah told me that.
So, we had a hiccup in 2007, a crash, whatever you want to call it, in real estate.
No. That was not a real estate crash. That was a monetary crash.
Okay.
The banks had no money. It was a complete shutdown of the whole system.
Was it a real estate bubble? You wouldn't define it as a real estate bubble?
Well, it caused the real estate to go down because there was no money for real estate. But it wasn't a real estate crash or a real estate downturn. It was real estate going down because there was no money in the system.
Okay.
Well, a lot of it was also, I disagree a little bit.
Okay, please.
A lot of it was caused by the fact that President Bush, who I happen to like, decided that less wealthy people should be able to buy houses.
Yeah.
So they made it possible for everybody to buy a house. It was
even if
stupid.
you couldn't afford it.
Even if you couldn't afford it. I had a housekeeper at our housekeeper in Florida. Remember, housekeeper in Florida bought a $750,000 house. I says, how did you do this?
You overpaid her. You were overpaid.
Oh, no. Believe me, she was earning. She says, well, I didn't have to put any money down, and I got a loan for like 2%. And I said, yeah, but that's only like for 4 years, And then it goes to market. And of course, she went bankrupt and she lost the house, and it killed the home market. Which you all saw that movie about selling mortgages short.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. The whole market. I mean, they're still selling today. They're still trying to correct the selling of the bonds for all those houses back in 2000.
And then all the subprime lenders went out of business.
Right.
And then that was it.
Nobody went to jail. Some got sued and paid a few dollars.
Yeah.
But it was a stupid idea that, and I'm trying to think of a nice word, that less wealthy people should be able to live as good as wealthy people. That doesn't work.
Okay.
By the way,
that won't win votes, but I gotcha.
Bloomberg got caught saying something like that. They found it on tape.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, he did. Yeah,
saw it on TV.
Yeah, he said it in a descriptive way that wasn't too nice.
But it spread outside of the subprime market, and this was something that it was because of that same liberal policy towards.
You can't give people mortgages, though, who can't hold it for the whole term. I mean, when you sell a mortgage or you give a mortgage to a guy buying a house, it's one rate, but in 5 years or 3 years, the rate's going to change, and you don't know what the rate is.
Yeah, you
shouldn't do it.
Yeah, you're right, and you should today. There's no way that you're going to get. You can get a low interest mortgage, but you're going to get it for 70%, generally speaking, at a number that you can afford. And the people are comfortable. The bankers are afford
70% loan to value.
Yeah, 70% loan to value, and that you can afford to pay it because no one wants to take them back. Bank's not lending you to take it back; they're lending it to you for you to pay your mortgage, stay there, and pay your mortgage. So it's much more. You have to be much more credit worthy today than then.
Okay. Is there any fear for either of you of a major?
Not under the present. Not that. Trump has anything to do with it. Not under the present government regulations. They're not making the same mistake that they made 15, 20 years ago. And,
you can give him a little credit. You know,
no, well, I mean, I don't think he gets involved with HUD, but he's got other things to think about. Even though he did change a lot of real estate things in that tax law that passed in 2017, which is great.
Yeah, the depreciation.
But being in the business, it was great. But not as far as mortgages for home buyers. And he's pushed them down so low. I mean, you can get a mortgage today for a little over 3% on your house. So you don't have to worry about something like that.
Sure. Okay. Gentlemen, thank you both for this. This was really great fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Making a Smarter Agent. Do me a favor. If you liked Making a Smarter Agent, please go to Apple Podcasts or any of the podcast services you might be listening through and give me 5 stars. I look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, connect with Rain Nation, that's RAIGNATION, on Facebook. It's part think tank, part group therapy for realtors, all coaching, and it's affordable. Please tune in again next week to listen to another exciting episode of Making a Smarter Agent.